Well, Nebraska continues their search to replace Tony White at the defensive coordinator position. A few names have emerged over the last couple of days, but there's one in particular that I want to go over that would be an absolute home run hire, in my opinion, for a defensive coordinator spot, not only due to his schematics, but the way the personnel that are already on the team fit those schematics. Now, first things first, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm almost at 6K subs. It would really, really help me out. You stay up to date for all the, breaking news, film reviews coming for every single player in the 2025 class, as well as transfer and portal news as well. So, and if you're, continuous viewer, please drop a like, leave a comment, let me know what y'all think and what y'all want next. I got a few things coming for you, and apologies for the video. No video yesterday. I've been a little bit sick. It's still kind of in my voice, so bear with me here. But let me go ahead and dive right into it. And the person that I am referring to is SMU's Scott Simon. Now, the thing that I really like about Scott, like I said, is the personnel and the schematic, things that kind of mirror up with what Nebraska already has in terms of what they're recruiting and the style of player they're recruiting. Now, I'm going to go over the scheme first, and then I'm going to go through his history. So, first thing with his schematics, he runs an aggressive defense. It's a 4-2-5, which a 4-2-5 is really a 4-3 combo with a 3-3-5, which the 3-3-5 is, of course, what Tony White has run. Now, it's aggressive. It kind of emphasizes speed, disruption, versatility, with an extra emphasis on creating turnovers. And when I get into his previous defense, you will see just how that's kind of emerged in his time at each location and just how good they have been in recent years at forcing turnovers. Now, another thing in this, there is a emerging linebacker out of the portal that is at Fresno State, Phoenix Jackson. Now, one of the things, Nebraska is in his top 4, but SMU is also in his top 4, which could be very, very interesting in terms of how that may play out. So, talking about a scheme a little bit more. It's a defense that gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. And like I said, it's a combination of the 4-3 and the 3-3-5. With the 5 defensive backs, that's kind of coming from that 3-3-5 style that's, a little bit more quick in trying to keep up with these faster paced spread offenses. But then it also has a little bit of a balance of a 4-3 with a 6-man box, which definitely helps a lot more against the run. So 4-2-5 and 3-3-5 are fairly newer defenses in terms of how much they're being utilized, and for very good reason. Again, the speed is increasing in the game, so defenses have to adjust. And with that, with Nebraska being, recruiting 3-3-5 personnel, they're a really good fit for this defense, which is very, very important when you bring in a new defensive coordinator. Now, when it gets into the actual schematics and the type of player that'll be on the field. So there's going to be a rover, just like the 3-3-5 had. And typically that's going to be your Sam linebacker. And that's going to be a kind of, smaller linebacker, but bigger than a safety. But that person has to be very, very quick. They have to be athletic. They have to be able to cover man coverage. So that has to be one of your best players, if not your best player on the defense. So linebacker is going to be very, very important in this regard, especially at that Sam linebacker. So we'll continue to monitor how that comes along if he does, in fact, come on board. Now, another thing, too, is there's going to be a lot of rotations with that, because you're going to have, smaller, rangier guys out there for certain spread offenses. And then when you need to kind of bottle up and stop the run, you're going to go to a little bit more of the bigger style of players. So similar to Tony White's 3-3-5, where there's a heavy rotation of guys and heavy rotation of players throughout the game and throughout the season. So there's going to be a lot of mixing it up, just like we saw with him, a lot of stunts, and a lot of it relies on the play calling and just matchups. So, he's shown a history of being able to call the right defenses and has really, really turned some programs around. Now, he was first at Liberty, and Liberty had their transition in 2017 to 2018 from the FCS to the FBS. Now, when it was in the FCS, he wasn't the defensive coordinator, but they allowed over 30 points per game and almost 450 yards per game. Now, when he took over, and the next season in 2018, it was their first year at FBS, but they struggled. You got to understand, They have FCS players that they were recruiting, and so it's going to take some time to get those type of personnel in there. But the turnaround happened quickly. First year at FBS, 37 points per game given up, almost 500 yards per game of offense given up. Again, FCS type of players recruited for that defense. Now, when Hugh Freeze came on the next season, he kind of coined him the quote unquote head coach of the defense, which was met with some criticism because very young coach, but also, didn't really have a track record yet of being proven. And, so fans were a little bit weary of that naturally, just with him not having much of a proven track record at defensive coordinator because he didn't have experience there. He did work with safeties. He did work with linebackers, which is also going to be very, very important. Now, moving forward, the next year, after Hugh Freeze was hired, they improved their points per game from 37 points per game to 28 points per game. Went from 500 yards per game of offense given up to just over 400 yards of offense per game. So he recruited very, very well. I think there was 37 defensive recruits that he brought in under his tenure there. And by 2020, they had improved to 22nd in points per game. And in 2021, they were 24th in points allowed at 21.5. The year prior, it was about 20.5. So then he moves forward to SMU. SMU brings him on, and he has, again, success there in slow improvement of SMU's defense. But in the most recent season, in 2023, he ended up having a defense with 47 sacks, which was second most in history. They finished first with 5 defensive touchdowns, first in FBS. His defensive unit was top 25 in all of the following categories. Defensive touchdowns, they were first. Sacks, third. Third down defense, they were fourth at 28%. Now, getting off the field on third down is very, very important for Nebraska, especially in the Big Ten with these knock them out, grind them out style of games that sometimes get shortened with minimal possessions. Getting off the field on third down is extremely important. Defensive passing efficiency, they were 9th. Scoring defense, 17.8 points per game, put them at 11th. Total defense put them at 12th. Passing yards allowed per game, 182.2, 13th in the country, which again, Nebraska did struggle this year, giving up explosive plays in the secondary. And we saw that throughout the season. The secondary was really, really one of the big issues for this team in this season. And you have a guy who potentially could come in and has worked with defensive backs before, but has also worked with linebackers directly and fields a really good defense. Now, total defense, he was 12th. Passing yards allowed per game, 182.2, like I said, 13th. Tackles for loss, 7.1 per game, putting him at 16th. And red zone defense, again, another important factor for Nebraska, 25th in that regard. So Scott Simon is a guy that I really, really think could come in and, like I said, be a home run hire, because one of the most important things when you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator is to make sure that your players fit the base. So it's one of those things where you can't just bring in a guy who, runs a 4-3, and you're going to need much bigger personnel, 3-4. You're going to need certain personnel. Now, with this, again, 3-3-5 and 4-2-5, they really recruit very similar players for those defenses. A few of the teams that run it, Texas A&M runs a base 4-2-5. But the thing about it is you'll see a lot of players getting recruited to those teams that run 3-3-5 and 4-2-5, and that's by design. Those style of players are going to be the ones that fit best in these systems. That's the reason why those teams are typically the ones recruiting them the most. And now with Nebraska's continuous, versatile style and the commitment to being in a more aggressive defense over the last few years and a more physical defense over the last few years, this is a hire that could really, really help in terms of that. But also he has a proven track record of development, recruiting, and a few guys signed in the NFL under him. So Scott Simons, that is a name to look out for in the coming days. They have a game tonight, so you can see a little bit of that. However, I would not judge off of just the one game. His track record speaks for itself. He has turned teams around, and he has not only turned them around, he has continued that success. And that is the biggest thing. It's not just, it's one thing to turn him around, but it's another thing to continuously improve and make sure that there's longevity and it's not just a 1-year turnaround like Ryan Walters, for instance, where he had that short tenure at Illinois. However, I talked about this on my live stream. Ryan Walters gave up 29 points per game to Big Ten opponents when he was the defensive coordinator at Illinois. The next season, they only gave up 22. So that should go to show you, with Ryan Walters and stuff like that, that is the type of things you need to look for. Is probably Brett Bielema was doing less than Ryan Walters. In this instance, I've watched some of the film on him, and it's really due to his play calling, his schematics, and just how smart he is as a defensive coordinator. So again, like I said, if you like this video and you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest, please consider subscribing. Drop your comments and let me know what you think or who you think we should bring in as a defensive coordinator. Let me know your wish list or just your thoughts in general below. Drop a like on the video, and thank y'all so much, and I will see you in the next episode. Peace.